Good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing well tonight. It's another session that we are holding for Ultimate Back to School Countdown. So, if you're seeing us, I'm just going to give you a few minutes to message a friend, message somebody that you know will be able to get here tonight, and just let them know that we've started. We're live. So we're here and we are live. Just tell a friend we're here, we're live, we're here, we're live, we're here, we're live. Tell a friend that we are live, we are live, we are live, and we're just waiting for people to join in. I don't think we're live on Instagram, so I'm just quickly gonna on there as soon as possible. Just tell somebody we are live. Just send a message to someone, just tell them that we are live on Instagram. Yep, we are live everywhere. That's amazing. All right. Hi, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. We are live. I believe on all platforms now. We're going to wait just one more minute because we want to kickstart literally in a minute. So tell a friend, tell a sister, tell a brother, tell a parent that we are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session, Rising Stars. Right, we're just going to say a quick prayer and we're going to go right into this session. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for tonight. We give you praise because you are a good God. We thank you for the ability that you give us. And Father, Lord, for your word that says, from lack of knowledge, my people perish. Tonight, we are here to have a discussion on how we can support our teams. May you be in this room. May you be in this conversation. May all that we do glorify your name. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So thank you all so much for, reaching out and, connecting with us this evening. It's an honor and a privilege to have you around. We've got some wonderful panelists here tonight, and they are going to tell us or give us information on how we can support our teens. When a child reaches that age, is so crucial for them, and it's important that we get to know what we need to know. So tonight it's my honor as the host, and I would not be moderating. I've got a very wonderful young woman that is going to be moderating tonight, and she's in the person of Dorcas Opoku, and she is actually a therapist and a trained therapist. So yes, we know who she is, and she is a wonderful young woman who is very knowledgeable in things of the mind and how we are able to have control over all that our thoughts are. And I deemed it appropriate for her to moderate this session. So I will just welcome onto the platform Dorcas, and she will be moderating tonight. As the moderator, After that, I've got my able panelists who are going to be with me tonight as well. And I have some really big guns here tonight. And it's an honor for me to know this woman. She is an award-winning strategist, educational strategist, and her name is in many rooms, many schools. And besides that, she has walked this path before by raising two extraordinary boys who are not just extraordinary in her eyes, but in the eyes of, nationally. They have climbed the ladder of being some of the smartest boys in the country. And it's no other person than my sister and a wonderful lady. Her name is Elaine Walker, and she is an educational strategist. Welcome, Elaine, to this evening's conversation. Um, in addition to Elaine, I hope you're giving me claps. I want to see some emojis. Please encourage them. Send them some emojis or something because I'm excited. In addition to Elaine, we also have um, a young man who is also um, in the business of supporting young people. Um, he's a community lead, and I know that he's got a background in social work as well. And tonight we also have um, the privilege of having two people who work directly with young people in our communities as community leads, especially for violence and crime within our community, violence reduction coordinators, and their community safety leads, which is so important. So Max has got a background in social work and as well as educational practitioner. Correct me if I'm wrong, Max, but she has a whole knowledge about things that are happening socially with our children. So I welcome Max Woods as well on stage. And I also welcome Emmanuel Adam on stage. And Emmanuel is actually used to be a teacher as well. So he's also going to bring on board his knowledge of education and, what is happening there. And in addition to that, we have Samuel, um, who is an IT teacher and also head of year. So he's also going to give us a bit more information about what is happening curriculum sides within our school sector. So I'll also invite Samuel onto the stage. Um, but I will gonna wait a sec to put Sam on. Um, Sam will be able to come on in a sec, but I want us to start the conversation. So at this point, I'll hand over to Dorcas and I'll be out of your way. I'll see you all in a bit. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Phyllis. It's a pleasure to be on this panel. Tonight, we're going to have an open and honest conversation about the challenges, but also the opportunities in secondary school learning, looking not only at how young people develop academically, but also at their behaviors, at their relationships, at the life skills that shape their journey into adulthood. So I'm going to open up with yourself, Elaine, and just ask for the listeners today, what should parents know about navigating the pressures of secondary education, especially for Black and faith-based families in both public and private settings?
Hi, good evening. I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me? If the parents can hear me, put a one in the chat. If you can't hear me, put a two. Um, but I think that what we can't do is separate primary from secondary, and that the whole purpose of success for the child begins very much at home, and it begins about what you're doing. So, um, I think that when you're trying to navigate secondary, whether you're in the independent sector or whether you're in the state sector, it's about understanding who your child is, how they learn, and also having a relationship with the school. There are a lot of parents out here who do not have a relationship with the school. They are just expecting the school to do everything. And then a whole term goes by or a whole year, and then when things don't go right, they're coming at the school like, why didn't you tell me? But did you ask the question? That's what
Yeah.
I always say to parents. Did you ask the question? You know, my child is coming home with this homework that they do not understand. Have you asked? Have you got into ask why? And when I'm saying ask the question, don't go in like you're fighting with everybody. You have to go in with a collaborative approach. Um, and we do like this narrative of the system is against me. I'm not saying that the system is not rigged, but you have to understand the system that you're working in. There's a saying that says, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah.
Understand the game that you are playing, understand where you are positioned. And if there are any faith based parents on here, I always say that there are three P's: prayer, planning, and positioning. A lot of parents do a lot of prayer. They don't understand about the system of the school. They don't understand about the education. If I was to ask any parent on here, have you been onto what the Ministry of Education website to find out what your child should be learning in year seven, in year eight? Sometimes I ask parents, oh, your child is doing GCSEs. What board are they doing? And they don't know. So, what I think is really important is from the very early stage, get involved with your child at school. Um, and when you get to, by the time you get to secondary, you have a plan of where you're going. A lot of parents don't have a plan. I think I've talked too much, but yeah, that's my answer.
No, I think that is very, very valuable. This idea that we actually have to be fully invested in the holistic experience of the child, and that involves the active participation within their academic experience from the get go. So, not just from secondary school, but also from primary school. And being fully invested is by having a plan, actually being knowledgeable about the system, which is phenomenal advice. If you can have,
Yeah, and sorry,
yeah, go
sorry.
on.
Can I just say something? Can I say something else? Um, a lot of parents think that the success of a child is just the reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now, if any parents are on here and they've watched the film King Richard, which is about Richard Williams, who's the father of Venus and Serena, he wrote down before those children were born what they were going to be. So he said that Venus was going to win Wimbledon, and he said that Serena was going to be the GOAT. What have you spoken over your child? How great are they going to be? Because a lot of times parents are allowing the wind to dictate who their child is going to be, but God gave you that child, you know. And so, who is your child going to be? For example, with me, when I was left with two young boys and and I was divorced, and I said to myself, okay, I'm a single mother. This is what the statistics say, but this is what they are going to be. I made a decision, and a lot of parents have not made the decision. They're just allowing their children to, just be raised anyhow. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. And if you have an intellectually able child, because from what Phyllis has made us aware of, and if people don't know your story already, with an intellectually able child, how can you enhance their abilities? So we've understood the power of what you are speaking over your child and how that holds weight in their sense of confidence, identity, and in the destiny that you're building. But what are some of the practical tools that parents can use to enhance their child's ability?
I'll take this one. From my perspective, I feel that by the way, can you hear me, Dorcas? Right? Do you want to make sure you can hear me? Perfect. I think from my perspective, I think parents really have to have a real understanding of what their rights are. They have to know. They have to be educated as well within the scheme and the system of whatever the young person's involved in. Because I think even when you're talking about that, Elaine, about the King Richard film, um, um, Venus and Serena's father was very educated, was very knowledgeable about the process and the systems. And I feel like sometimes we advocate good practice to our offsprings without actually practicing ourselves. And I do feel that it does work very, very positively when parents are actually aware of their rights. They're willing to have regular dialogue with school institutes to make sure that their offspring are seen and valued within the school environment. When I was thinking about this question, specifically related to Black and faith-based families, is for me personally, being obviously an Afro Caribbean person myself, um, the standards really of school life is double. Is the demands are double for Black and ethnic minority children in the school. They have to navigate the pressures of representation, bias, and sometimes even at worst identity. And it's really important for parents to really advocate a sense of value for their children and actually allow them to understand the metric of where they are in within that process of whatever direction they want to go into. And I think the knowledge, equipping yourself, really, you can't really be ready to battle something when you don't have your weapons sharpened yourself. And I think it's really important that we take a lot of pride within actually making sure we're knowledgeable about what we need to do. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what.
Thank you so much. Elaine, I wanted to bring this back to you about if you have an intellectually able child, how can you enhance their abilities? Particularly for parents who are looking to send their children into private and independent institutions, but don't necessarily have the resources. So are looking to enter through scholarship programs or other initiatives. What are some of the things that parents can practically do to equip their child to enter into these spaces?
Okay, so obviously they can join my community, which specializes in children who are gifted. But I just do want to say that being gifted at maths and English and the three R's doesn't necessarily, you could also be lacking in other social areas. And so it is deemed as a special educational need. A lot of parents are not aware of this. And so if your child is really smart but hasn't got any friends, there's nothing wrong with them. It just means that they're operating at a particular level that their peers cannot understand. So we have to create a space for them. Um, there are lots of scholarships for children who are bright or really good at sports, drama, art. I mean, my children play 7 instruments between the two of them, all at distinction level. And so you have to be really intentional as a parent as to how you're going to get and strategic. I always tell parents that it's about strategy and be really understanding of what you're trying to achieve. I just want to go back to what Emmanuel was saying about identity. Identity comes from the home. So if a child feels like they're dealing with identity issues at school, it's a problem that's been at the foundation stage, right? And if the home is difficult, then we as a community need to help that child so they understand who they completely are. I was born and raised here, and I went to an independent school in this country. From the age of 2.5, I went on to King's and Oxford. I don't have an identity problem. I am very Ghanaian, trust me. But when I walk into a room, I know that the education that I have had helps me navigate that room. And as the young ones would say now, code switch in various areas. And so I think that to any parent out there who feels that their child has a gift, we need to know that we need to sharpen that gift, because a gift over something that is very well rehearsed. I always say to my children that you might be great at the piano, you might be naturally gifted, but if you don't practice and perfect that practice, the person that who does that will be better than you who naturally are really great at it. So I think
Mm,
it's about parents being intentional. It's just about parents who want their children to be footballers. They are there every single Saturday, every single Sunday. They've got a coach. You have to be intentional at what you are making your child skilled at. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
no, that makes perfect sense. And I think honing in on the idea that Emmanuel has even presented into the conversation about identity and setting that sense of value, I think what we also need to bear in mind is that parents, in the process of being intentional, are being curious in identifying their child's unique abilities, whatever that is. Because if you're not paying attention to what the child is interested in, what they're gravitated towards, the way that they think, it's very difficult for us to then develop something if we're not even aware of what we're developing. Sometimes we push things onto our children, which has its place, but there's I love to say this in to a lot of my clients that usually our ease is a map to our calling. The things that come to us with ease is usually a map to our calling, to our giftings, to our abilities. So there are things that each child has that they're showcasing in their everyday life or even in the way that they talk, but we're not paying attention to those things to then build upon it strategically. So, Max, I wanted to ask yourself, you know, based on the work that you do, how can schools and home build a united front to support teenagers academically and socially?
I think it's a subject that's comes with its own hypocrisies because we are endeavoring for children to be independent in these spaces, and we never want to be overbearing or guide them too much, as many parents do. I think what you must do is allow your child to have an open communication and not be fearful about what they're not succeeding at in school. I'm really struggling with maths. I'm really struggling with English. I'm really struggling with science, but I'm fantastic in sports. I'm fantastic in drama. Allow that communication to happen. Don't let their failures be part of their personality, be part of their future indictments, be part of their personality. You know, a child is who they are, and you're not going to you obviously want them to be successful in English, maths and science, and we know how important those subjects are, but we must put too much pressure on those. And I think to have the child as the catalyst in between, I think even myself, I can remember, you know, my parents circumventing me, going straight to the school, finding out what's going on, and it makes it feel a bit purposeless. You know, they're going straight to my maths teacher, finding out I'm doing terribly. Why would I want to do better? Whereas I think if there's an encouragement of saying, "Oh, we're all in this together," you know, we know how important you don't like how much you don't like maths, but we know how important it is to succeed. I think those subtle conversations can be really, really valuable for students.
Oh, honestly, and I think that the lines of communication have to be open. I think that is so important. I love that you bring that point because when you have relationship with your child, there is access to their entire world, the things that they are drawn to, but also the things that they are worried about. And that gives room as for the parent to feel as though that they can actively now think of ways to help support the child. So I'm going to
Sorry,
introduce.
Dorcas, can I
Yeah,
just say something, please?
yeah,
You talk about relationship, and I do lots of courses with parents, and what is a good relationship to you, the parent, may not be a good relationship to the child. You have to create an environment in your house that means that a child can fail safely and be comfortable with saying certain things to you. And so, as a parent, you have to be a good listener, a good communicator, and you have to unlearn certain things. Because if we look at the way that our parents were raised, they cannot parent this generation. It's a very different generation. And so I always say to parents that your relationship and the child's relationships are not the same. So you
yeah,
have to understand, have that communication, just like what Max said, have that conversation. And even if you go to school and you're doing maths and you're not doing great at maths, it's okay. One of my children is an amazing actor, but he went through a very traumatic season in his life, and had a mental breakdown and couldn't sit his GCSEs. Am I saying he's a failure? No, I'm not saying he's a failure. But the old generation would have said, "Oh well, you haven't done reading, writing, and arithmetic. Then therefore you haven't done well because the standards are by my standards. And what's everybody else going to think? Nobody cares what anybody else is going to think. It's about that particular child and asking yourself, what gift has that child been given? And my role is to grow that gift and to amplify that gift so that they can be the best version of themselves.
Just briefly, I remember saying this to a parent that really stood out to a parent who was very much overbearing and wanting their child to succeed and go to the Oxbridge colleges. I remember saying, would you rather a child who was depressed and at Oxford or Cambridge, or would you rather a child who was happy and may not be at those universities that you want? And I think what we really want for young people is their happiness over academia, isn't it? We want a child who is within a world that they are happy. And I think that's important to recognize at times those pressures that come off the back of it.
Yeah. And I think taking it back to this whole idea of even just the relational intelligence and the perception of what relationship is meant to look like, it all comes back to the curiosity into the world of the child, and not superimposing your reality and your desires and your projections from your adult lens and your history and how things were done, such that you are circumventing what is right in front of you, engaging with the current reality, engaging with the world where a young people's playground is TikTok. You have to become, I think as a parent, you have to really immerse yourself into what is happening right now and understanding what works for your child. So I think that is such a key point. Emmanuel, do you have any thoughts on what we're raising right now before I
Um,
introduce Samuel?
yeah, to be perfectly honest with you, a lot of what you're saying, I completely relate to. I think having a deeper understanding of your offspring is really important. I come from a family where I am a lot more closer to my younger brother as opposed to my parents being closer to him, and a lot of um, the characteristics of actually trying to understand and build a relationship is between them. It's always sort of getting parents to maybe understand things from the eyes of a young person as well. So it's a really silly example. I went up to my dad and I said, "Oh, Dad, do you actually know my brother's favorite color?" And he didn't have a clue. Like, for
Yeah.
example, it's really silly, but like it reinforces like the sort of like bridges you're trying to build with offsprings. And I feel like sometimes the old African mentality is that, oh, if I bring the young person to my eye level, then I feel like then you give them license for them to challenge you, or they see you as a friend in quotation marks. I've heard many times I'm not your friend kind of thing before, as a phrase before. But I think sometimes, obviously, as new gen parents, we actually becoming our parents. And I think we have to take a different approach, and it's about maybe giving a leeway to actually give a deeper understanding to, because the environment that people grow up in was not, it's very different, and it's always evolving. That's what I'd say.
Hi, Phyllis.
Hi, I just gonna come and show my face. And if you would like to ask me any question at any point, please do so. Because I've got people asking where I am. So I'm here, I'm in the background, but I'm just having a listen because I want to take it in. But if there's any questions or anything anyone wants to put to me, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to introduce Samuel. Would Samuel be able to come to the stage now? Awesome. 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 Welcome to the conversation that we are having on ways that we can support young people behaviorally, academically, socially, and with their relationships as they transition into adulthood. This is conversations all about the challenges and the opportunities that secondary school learning presents. So, Samuel, would you like to share a bit about what you do so that the audience can understand your lens and your
Sure.
perspective?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, apologies for my voice. If you can't hear me, please let me know, and I'll try and project as much as I can. But yeah, I'm Samuel. Can you hear me? Someone said not yet. Can you
Yes,
hear
we
me? You can, bro. Yeah. Yeah, I'm Samuel. I am a secondary IT teacher. I'm equally head of year. I've been doing this for some time. I enjoy what I do. I'm married. I've got 2 kids. So I kind of have an understanding of, what the pressures are like in secondary school, particularly when it comes down to, ethnic minority people. And of course, in terms of the position, or probably where I sit, in terms of being head of year, I know that there are times where things are a little bit partial when it comes to how, unfortunately, some students are treated as a result of stereotype. And so, yeah, I'm sure as we go along, we'll definitely delve into questions and, yeah, just find a little bit more as to how we can change the system or what we can do to support our children at school. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's pretty much it about me.
Thank
But
you
hi
so
to
much.
everybody on here.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to throw this question to all of us because we've been talking about being curious, having the conversation, building the relationship. But that may sound so generic and so broad to our audience. And so I want us to really enter into the nitty-gritty of what that actually looks like. What does that really look like? So, how can parents hold meaningful conversations with their teens in a world of distraction and identity confusion? How can parents actually have meaningful conversations? How do we strike conversations with our teenagers, particularly for parents who feel like their world is so far removed? They were walking for 5 hours to collect water to have to run their bath, and now you're telling me about your TikTok saga. Like they just can't, what ways can they approach meaningful conversations? And just to throw some ideas of conversations to have to engage young people nowadays.
Well, 'cause I'm going to kick off because I think I kind of already kind of hinted a little bit at this earlier with sort of the prompt I had about my own sort of personal situation. So I think for me personally, and Elaine hinted at this earlier, I think a lot of it about meaningful conversations, and I think meaningful conversations actually, for me, is about active listening a lot of the times, and I feel like our parents really have to really delve into the view of active listening. Sometimes teenagers can feel like really lectured at, especially in a world where they're bombarded with like online voices, they're bombarded with like the attention's being demanded at every opportunity, at every stage. Meaningful conversation can happen when young people feel respected and heard. And I feel sometimes it's about parents really picking their moments, um, understanding that the setting and how they can have tough conversations, being curious about children's worlds, no matter what at what level, even if it feels very different to what they were used to, what they were growing up with. And I personally, from my line of work, I see that when young people feel understood at home, they're more likely to come to their parents and actually explore about and actually try to get their support and input around when something goes wrong. And for me, that is the best way to do it. I think parents, for me, it's about active listening, and then it's more about listening more for parents, really, instead of actually talking. Thank you.
Hmm.
Cool. Thank you, Manuel. Let me just add a few things here. Um, so my 6-year-old will come home from school, and the conversation, normally sparks off with two questions. How was your day? What was one thing that was good about your day? What was one thing you didn't like about your day? Now, the moment we delve into what was good, we ask questions, we probe to understand why this was good. And then on the other hand, whatever she felt wasn't good, questions will be, what made you feel the way you felt? Why wasn't it good? Did you speak to anyone about it? Why were you sad? Did you speak to your teacher about it? Did you speak to a friend? Once we delve into that, I think that's where, as Emmanuel, rightly said, that comes with active listening. So I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm trying to understand a bit more about your feelings. If we don't do that, if we don't get into a dialogue, and the questions we keep asking is, how was your day? Did you learn? Were you listening? Did you answer questions? That's just an what? Open-ended question or a closed-ended question or whatever it is. Yes, no. But if we get to a point in a place where, okay, the child starts talking about, well, I didn't enjoy this subject, so I didn't enjoy algebra, for example. Okay, what is it about algebra? Or I get a little bit confused with when they start bringing in all these alphabets into numbers. Oh, okay, let's delve into that a bit more. That then becomes more engaging. Or your child might come home and say, look, we had PE today. During PE, we played football. I scored 3 goals. We can delve into that a bit more rather than it being very, you know, old school. And it's just yes, no, yes, no. Oh, okay, make sure you do this the next time. It doesn't really help. I think intentionality also helps as well, where you're very intentional to actually find out a little bit more about the interest of your child. Not every single person that comes to school is a bookworm or whatever it is. There are some who genuinely do not like school, point blank. And it's about what can we do as teachers, as parents, to understand what's going on mentally, psychologically, physically, emotionally, and all the other things that are going on in this world with the pressures, etc. So I think being very intentional really, really helps. Building that relationship with your child also helps. Like, I cannot stress on that enough. As a teacher, there are times where I see young people who are so lost, completely lost. And there are times where I just call them into the office and I'm like, look, what's going on? I feel like you don't see yourself today. And it's a conversation. So until we get to a point where we can do those things, unfortunately, some of our kids will struggle. And if they don't have anybody they can open up to, unfortunately, it gets very difficult and they get lost. So I just wanted to add that to what Emmanuel equally said.
Can I just add something to what Samuel said, please? And it's very well, very great having a conversation. But the issue is that we've never taught our children how to express themselves emotionally, and that is because as parents, we don't know how to do it ourselves. And a lot of times, we are speaking to our children, but we're holding a mirror in front of us, which is showing us this is not how I communicate with my child. A lot of parents do not know how to communicate with their children. So yes, Samuel said, "How was your day?" The next question should be, how did that make you feel? So you develop the vocabulary for emotional awareness, because a lot of children don't know how to express themselves emotionally. That's why we get children throwing tantrums, doing this, doing that, because there is a burning desire into them in that I'm not being heard. I'm not being heard because I'm not being taught. Nobody just wakes up and knows how to express themselves emotionally. It is something that must be modeled in the home. Children
Oh,
do what we do, not what. That kind of parenting does not work anymore. Sorry, I just cut off. Did you hear what I said?
You
So
did come
children have to be taught how to emotionally regulate themselves, how to emotionally, yeah. Children have to be taught how to emotionally regulate themselves, how to emotionally communicate with themselves. And so what I say to a lot of parents that, what do you do when you get angry? You scream and you shout. Yet you're telling your child not to scream and shout. Come on, let's let's be serious here, right?
yeah.
So if I am upset about something, I should be able to tell my child, listen, mum is really upset about something. This is what happened to me today. And so I had a really bad day. By doing that, you are showing your child how to have emotional language for the feelings that they are dealing with.
Most
Um,
certainly.
just,
But I
I
do
just
want
want,
to raise a point. I do want to raise a point in this conversation because I understand that there are times where, children are taught how to regulate, children are taught how to emotionally express. We do have to throw into the conversation the hormones, puberty, the irritability, and sometimes you might be um dealing with a child that is just like, please leave me alone. And so how do we also learn to give them space in their time of processing?
I think let me try and answer that. I think
I think, sorry,
no,
sorry.
go ahead, Elaine. It's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Thank you so much, Samuel. I think that we must understand that the Bible says that there are times and seasons. Now, there's a book that every parent should read called Raising Boys and Raising Girls. There are different seasons in the time's life, where they will need the mother, where they will need the father. And you have to understand this. And if a child is saying, leave me alone, that's okay. That's actually okay to say, leave me alone. Do you not get moments when you're like, I don't want to talk to anybody? Don't act like we don't. We do. It's okay for a child to say, leave me alone. But
Yeah.
it's actually okay. You know, boys, my children are 21 and 20, right? There was a period when my children couldn't talk to me. And children go through that, and it's okay. But in our culture, it's like, how dare my child tell me I don't want to talk to you? No. We need to understand times and seasons, and we need to understand the different developmental needs that children have. That's all I wanted to add, but I'm pretty sure Samuel's got something more to add.
Yeah. I think. Okay. So I think sometimes the way things are said is equally important. Now, leave me alone depends on the tone, and it depends on what's happening at that point in time. What I've always said to my students at school is if you feel upset about something and you need space, don't say, oh, just go away or just leave me alone. What I've always told them to say is, I'm not okay. Can I just have a moment? And that is fine. And it's about understanding that at this point in time, the child is unable to regulate themselves. One, they feel unheard. Two, they don't know how to express themselves. Three, they need to calm down. Once they're a lot calmer, then we can proceed to having a conversation.
Mhm.
And so I think as parents, we need to understand when our teenagers are trying to communicate with us, but then unfortunately, the form of communication comes in a way where it may seem quote unquote disrespectful. So we have to teach our kids that it's okay to be upset, but
Mhm.
it's not okay to be harsh in your words or how you express yourself.
Mhm.
So I think we need to start teaching our kids how to speak when they are not okay, when they feel emotionally drained, and when they feel as if I'm not being heard, I just need a moment. So I think it's really, really important we get the wordings right. So one, it's not misinterpreted, or misconstrued. If you tell an African parent, leave me alone, whoa, that is like that's a taboo, that's disrespect. But if it's mom, dad, can I just have a moment to myself?
Yeah.
And then we can
Um,
proceed up. But yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, while Elaine and Sammy were talking, I actually was doing a little bit of research around a specific structured conversation technique, and this is something that, from my background as a teacher, like I really try to emphasize and use a lot. Even now, I use it every day in my everyday work. Something called restorative practice conversation. I know I'm getting a little bit theoretical, but I think this is what this platform is for, is to educate people that are listening about things that we're aware of, because obviously we are all professionals. And what the restorative practice conversation does is that it structures conversations and in an empathetic approach with the idea of resolving conflict. And what some of what you said, Elaine, and some of what you said, Samuel, is very, very important. Sometimes I feel like it's about ego, if I'm being truthful, with most parents. A lot of the time, it's, and obviously, of course, there's the stress of being an adult. Like, you've come home from a long day, you've just got in, you've sat down, maybe it's maybe something to eat. Young person comes up, your child comes up to you and says, "Oh, mom, this is what happened." You're probably not regulated yourself, and sometimes about your ego, and you're thinking, "How dare you come to me and speak to me in that way?" But sometimes by being intentional, and this is what this platform is for. Restorative practice really encourages and teaches anyone that uses it to actually talk about what the action made them feel, to work through the process. And what Samuel was talking about that earlier, I actually did that a lot with my younger brother. He's a very high academic person, and a lot of the times about explaining processes of something, because when you try to get young people to focus on the results and the judgment of things, it doesn't actually help them. So the conversation sort of practice that Sam used earlier, when the young person comes in, oh, how was your day? How do you feel? That is all teaching a process. And also you can equip that to your child to say, look, when you're feeling frustrated, instead of actually being judgmental about it, tell us what that action made you feel. So a classic example, I'm going to use Pastor Phyllis. So let's say I've come home and Pastor Phyllis has gone, uh, how was your day? And I've gone, oh, I don't want to talk about it. I'm angry. And then Pastor Phyllis says, well, actually, to be fair, like I do think we should talk about it. What happened? And can you tell me what that action made you feel? Is far more productive instead of actually the process of the oh, you're not speaking to me, I'm talking to you, I'm older than you, I'm your big sister, speak to me, blah blah blah, XYZ. Do you know what I mean? I think sometimes, in my language, we call that, I'm not sure how many pioneers there are on the platform, but sometimes it actually really helps. Max, I'll explain to you a little bit later on off screen. It's just the basis of like a little bit of a guidance around the conversation. And I do think coming from, and I actually did my part of my degree was English language, right? And it's about the importance of conversations. That's something I actually did as a meditation. The power of conversations, the position of power is how you understand how your words being received. And I think we should also really equip our parents, the audience, to really focus on how the purposes of their conversation, also the means of actually the process of it. Because if you're like being judgmental and you can't get your ego out of it, and then you expect it to be resolved, and you have expectations and it doesn't reach, and then the frustration comes, and then the young person's also frustrated about that, and then there's a clash, and it's, oh, my mom doesn't understand me, my parents don't understand me. Then next thing you know, they're doing loads of things outside of the home, which is something that we also need to talk about. It's about behavior in school and out of school. Then they start aligning more to do with people that they say your friends, and then next thing you know, your parents saying, "Oh, you always hang out with your friends." They're like, "My friends understand me more because they listen to me." But there's a breakdown in the communication much earlier, where the parent actually never equipped the young person to actually have explain how they feel. So for me, my little tad bit for anyone that's watching is about restorative practice structures. Please look into that. It's a really important tool that helps you really express how you feel in a structured way for meaningful action as well.
Yeah,
So
so Emmanuel, from what you've just shared, it's it's very valuable, because one thing that when we're thinking about conversations as a whole, you have to think about what is the objective of what I'm trying to communicate here? What am I trying to achieve? And if it's understanding, for you to break the attack defense situation, you have to break through it with the restorative practice. Having a process of a conversation which teaches the young person to communicate and express how they feel, whilst you also rise from attack and defense into a place of curiosity and understanding and attentive listening. Max, is there anything that you want to add, particularly with some of the things that we're starting to see within the school environment, as it pertains to social and emotional school avoidance? Now there's a rise in mental health patterns that we're seeing amongst young children today, particularly within the teenage age range. And what are some of the things that parents can do to intervene?
Yeah, this is a great follow on from what we've just been talking about, because I think the last topic we were talking about how we're trying to communicate with children in an ever changing and a vastly different world. These young people have this online sphere, and many different facets are incredibly hard to pay into. I would say that if your child is coming and speaking to you, even about the nuances of Minecraft or FIFA or these video games, use that as a point. We've been talking greatly about how we want to structure these conversations around children, but we know how it can fall on deaf ears so easily. When your child comes to you, I would recommend do feign some interest around their world, understand it, and then you can guide the conversation there as well, because their mental health will come out. Think about times where we talk about ourselves with friends as well, because so often we can relate it to ourselves. We don't just jump into a conversation and go, oh, this has happened today, and oh gosh, let me tell you about all the worst things that's happened. We gradually say it, don't we? We make a joke, we make a quip, we start off with a relational topic, and suddenly that topic is, of course, a center point to something so close to our heart, something that's really changed. Children are facing huge mounting pressures because they have an unbridled level of ambition and expectation after them. We're talking about the development of these new AI models, and what that means for education, and how young people are pushing themselves forward. Put yourselves in their shoes and think about, like, what does it mean to be successful now that you feel might even be feeling replaced as an academic, replaced as a young person. They have the weight of the world on their shoulders, on top of all the hormones and everything else that is going on in their lives. I specifically remember saying to my mum, when I would stress out, she would get so angry. We'd be having these heated arguments. It'd be very, very difficult. And sometimes I just have to say, I am a teenager. Do remember that. I do remember I am going through this right now. And I think it's important to remember that as well, because not all young people are confident enough to say that. But yeah, it is one thing I would recommend is just do show. You don't have to start playing these games or understand the nuances of their world, but you show interest, because that's the very start of the communication method, which can lead to so many fantastical starting points of very, very meaningful conversation between you and your child.
Oh, that's good. That is, I find what you just said so profound, because particularly with the idea of young people having their own unique weight upon their shoulders. And I think as parents, sometimes you can't comprehend, wait, I'm the one who's paying a mortgage here. How are you stressed? But in their own world, within this own season, it comes with its bespoke pressures. And one thing that I want to raise, and particularly with the young cohort of individuals that I've been working with, is just how on the online world is their playground now. And so, what I have witnessed, particularly with social emotional school avoidance, is that you will have an isolated incident that is taking place at school. So, there's a fight that's taking place at school. Prior to the boom of the social media, you will have that fight, people will talk about here and there, it will die down. Now somebody's recorded that fight, now it's being reposted on somebody's story, now people are talking about it, they've created a group chat, they're talking about it. Things can keep going, that an isolated incident that took place at school can carry on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and people can repost it and bring it back. And so I've been in conversations with parents whereby the child is very fearful of coming back to school. They feel really embarrassed. If they're being bullied, everything feels so exacerbated that they feel like actually the playground, which is their phone, is with them wherever they go. They can't hide from this. And so with this new reality, how we protect our children, one, like what you said, Max, is by showing a curiosity into their world and really making sense of this new reality, but also safeguarding them, checking through their phones, having parental controls over their phones. It worries me and it concerns me so deeply that when I speak to parents and they're like, oh, I don't know that social media thing, you have to get to know something about it, because adults and children are in closer proximity than ever before. They're consuming the same things. They can strike conversations with people that you don't have any knowledge of. And so as parents on this platform, I know Elaine and Samuel, you've raised that. What are some of the ways that we can protect our younger children and teenagers who live and breathe this online world? Yeah. What are some of the things that we can do?
You know what? Like again, it's hilarious because myself and Max, this is a massive part of the work we do.
Yeah.
We both work for a council in East London, and as community safety leads, a lot of our work is really focused on giving the online safety guidance not just for young people, but also for parents. And it's really interesting whenever we run like, sometimes we're involved in like online workshops and training. This is very specific to where we work at. I'm not saying it's like everything all parents can get access to, but we do an online safety workshop, and we will sort of list up the different apps, and then we just ask the parents how many of these apps do you actually recognize, and then you'll be shocked by the disparity between, oh my god, wait, what? That is what the young people are using, and that's what's happening. And a lot of the times, a lot of parents are not actually aware of the different functions, different options they have. Also, because of the sensitivity of social media, right? And it's a presumed opinion, right? So let's say in a setting where a young person is already very involved in social media. I know Elaine is probably thinking, yes, this comes from the 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 structure's already in the home, because if it's things are already built properly, then the young people may not necessarily be involved in social media. But let's have a presumed setting that there is the case that the young
No,
people are already.
everybody's involved in social media. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Everybody's involved in social media because we're moving into the fourth industrial revolution. Technology. If you're a parent and you don't understand about technology, there's a problem because that's a way of communication. And if you don't
But
understand how your children
you say that, but
communicate
you
online, it's a
amount of like
problem.
parents very against the idea of the new sort of like apps and things like that. Like, I'll give a classic example.
Because they
I
don't
mean,
understand it. Because
yeah,
they
they're
don't
just like,
understand it.
oh,
But they're
it's
all
not
in
for
WhatsApp groups. I'm just saying.
hey, that's a thing. And Facebook groups as well. Facebook groups, Facebook Marketplace, man. The work you've done can never be reversed. My point is, my point is that it's really about and giving the tools and understanding for these parents. So a lot of the times, like we section of the workshop we do, I'll speak about house party. You guys remember house party a couple of years back, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And Clubhouse, for example, and then
Yeah.
we will be like, well, are you sure that your kids have access to this stuff, or like stuff like Ubo, Max, what's some of the things the kids Twitch, help me out,
Yeah,
please,
like
Max. You know,
Discord,
Discord,
Telegram, lots of them. And
Telegram.
I think we assume the creators of these spaces know they're made for children and they're going to have the best interests of children at heart, but they're not.
They're
Peer-to-peer
not.
messaging is on most of these applications where the most devious of individuals can message your child with malcontent. Of course they can. And it's there because it creates more content, it creates more retention. These platforms are made in the free market for the free market. They keep it completely open to everyone. The rules we have to govern ourselves. I think there is slowly going to be change. You know, we've already seen this new online safety bill go through, and I think that's probably going to be the first of many, which is really for the luck of our children. I think obviously we're going to be hearing lots of kick up about our freedoms being taken away, but realistically, it is the best. There's so much stuff. You know, Gaza, we've all been experiencing it on social media. It's a huge topic at the moment. It's a massive thing that's publicized everywhere. Children have access to that same content we are consuming. And I think that's a real note that sometimes I have to remind parents that I work with and thinking like, that is news. We are consuming it in a structured way to better our knowledge. Children will not be able to understand it in the same manner we understand it and the emotional impact we are taking on board with these things. So I think it's important just to sort of step back and think just how dangerous these things are. And that's not to mean get rid of it all, shut down the hatches, control, guide,
Yes,
converse. You are
absolutely.
not going to be able to stop, because I know I was working with a parent, took the phone away. You can go into school now and a child will rent you their old phone, and you can just log back into Snapchat. No SIMs, no nothing needed. You can go in and your friend will just be like, hey, yeah, here's my old phone. Buy me lunch today. You can use that for the next 2 months while your phone is taken away. You don't need a SIM. You don't need a contract. All you need is an email and a login, and you can go and talk to anyone. So it is about, if you think, battening down the hatches and the conversation closes there with your child. But being able to say, oh gosh, I've seen some terrible things online recently to your child, that's the dialogue. That's the dialogue that's opened up. You can say, I've seen some really weird stuff, da, 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 and create that things. I think trends are good. Jumping on an online TikTok trend or something that's there, it just allows you to wiggle into a space. They make BBC News a couple of times a month or whatever. You can wiggle into a space whereby you can use that to talk with your child, just so that you know safety is part of that dialogue with them.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to, of course, if we see an influx of parents wiggling their bums on TikTok, Max, I'm blaming you. But I do definitely think what Max is saying is categorically right. I mean, even certain, I think for me also is about understanding the world of. I mean, we've been talking about this the whole process in this panel. For example, on Snapchat, for example, a lot of parents are not. They know that it's an app that's there, but they don't actually understand the certain different nuances and how parents can young people can hide messages from different people they're interacting with overseas, location follows, and like Max said, it's about control. There's so many different functions what you can actually advise young people on. So it's about blocking out key terms, words that you don't think is appropriate for your young person. You can do that now. It's about understanding how the reporting mechanisms through the apps work. So if you send a message, who does it go to? Can things be created? Is about screen time, and as silly as it sounds, like the level of exposure to some of these apps, also understanding that the impact, the emotional and so that the emotional and mental impact it has on a lot of these on a lot of young people, in affecting the anxiety, their moods, certain pressures that's like subliminally enforced within some of these apps as well. I mean, I can easily tell you stories about how young people we've worked with in our line of work where they say, I want to make money. Why? Because I've seen so and so person who's showing money on Snapchat and I want to make money like them. All of these influences have certain effects that will take your young person away from what I think may be focused on. So, like in a way, that's just something we do specifically in the borough that we work in. But I do think it's definitely up to parents to want to take up that learning. Again, we talked about that, immersing yourself in the world of your young person and actually being educating yourself. Because we did say that for you to understand what they're going through, educate yourself and so take an interest.
Okay. And I just wanna ask Elaine, how can parents with children in boarding school safeguard their children?
Well, any school has got a safeguarding policy. My children went to boarding school from the age of 10. And what parents, they seem to think that boarding school in the UK is like boarding school in Africa. You throw your children away. No, you do not. You have very much control. And I always talk about the triangle approach: the parent, the child, and the school. Everybody has got their role to play, right? And so you saying you're safeguarding your child, it means you've not done your research about the safeguarding policy of the school. Um, Most schools, depending on what age, my children went to school when they were young, you're not allowed to even have mobile phones. They were using Kindles and they were reading. You can't even have mobile phones. Um, as they get older, they went on to senior school at 13. Um, you only have, they have a time that they can give the mobile phone to you. I think you only have autonomy over your mobile phone when you get to sixth form. And even then, the house matron is like, hand it in, hand it in, hand it in. And even if you're in independent day school, when you go into school, you hand in your mobile at the beginning of the day and it's labeled and you pick it up. If you have to call your parent in the middle of the day, you don't call from your mobile, you call from the school office. That is how things are done. Um, and so I know that Eton, for example, now you can't even use a smartphone in the school. You have to use a brick phone. And I'm probably showing my age here. You know, that a lot of the parents that don't know how to use Snapchat, those days they were using AOL Messenger, MSN Messenger, all of those things. But now, look, I'm on Snapchat. I'm on every single social media platform, but my children tell me not to follow them. I'm on TikTok. I'm on everything, right? And so sometimes I'll be on TikTok and on my For You page will come my son. I'm like, bro, you need to go and shave because you look like you've got a mum who doesn't love you. And I will send him that message and he'll be like, mum, this is really embarrassing. I'm like, well, I don't want to see you on TikTok looking like this. So let's have that. But I have intentionally created that. And so even my son now on Instagram sends me motivational messages. And so I sent him a message today. I said, not my son sending me motivational messages on Instagram. But he says to me, Mum, don't DM me. You're my mum. My friends DM me on Instagram. That's really embarrassing, you know. So for us, they see us as WhatsApp people, WhatsApp warriors, right?
Yeah.
But what I've let them understand is, yes, your mum is very much a political, a public figure, but you're not going to be out here doing nonsense on Instagram or on social media, and I'm not going to know that. To the point where I tell my children I trust them, but you're going to put your settings on Snapchat so I know where you are. Because, you know, there was a time when I was away in Ghana and I phoned my son and I said, "Where are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm in the house." Um, and I phoned my dad. My dad was my son was in Hertfordshire, and I was like, "Listen, we need to have a conversation. I trust you," and that was because he felt he had to lie because he felt I didn't trust him. So I then had to start putting in place things to show him that I trusted him. But now I'm like, okay, I trust you, but there's something that we have to agree. You're going to put on your Snapchat notification so I can see where you are. I'm not stalking you, but just in case you need me to send you an Uber wherever you are, I can send you an Uber. It's about communication, and we've spoken about communication so many times on this call. But like I when parents are choosing a school, I always tell parents to have the gut test or the spirit test. When you go to a school and you feel some way about the school, it's not the right school for you or your child. You know, because a lot of parents choose schools because their friends' children go there or it's a name brand school. And something that Max said earlier, would you rather have a child who's depressed in in an Oxbridge school or a Russell Group school than a school that is than a university that's right for your child? A lot of parents do not understand. They pick schools according to themselves and not to the strength of the child. So one of
Yeah.
the things I always work on with families is a SWOT analysis. What's the child's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? I change weaknesses to worries because our children worry about a lot of things. They even worry about us, you know. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. That if you're choosing a boarding school, if you're choosing a university, if you're choosing the next chapter in your child's life, and you're make the choice um, one with the child. Don't say this is what you're doing and you're going with it. It doesn't. Life doesn't work like that anymore because you're going
Yeah.
to end up with a very resentful child, a very hurt child, a very unheard child, and they're just going to be wishing that the moment they can get out of your house, they're out of your house, and that's it.
Yeah. So it's about centering this child's strengths, their worries in the experience of allocating an institution for them. To end the conversation, I want to touch on learning. So, you know, the jump from primary school to secondary school can be a very big jump. Sam, what would you say parents can do to prepare their children to be academically prepared for this jump? Because that in and of itself can be overwhelming. And what are some of the pillars, you know, that schools look for in terms of identifying whether a child is on target or not based on the years? Oh, I can't hear you.
Um,
Oh, Sam, I think you're on
Sam,
mute.
I can't hear you. I think you're on mute. No, we
No,
can't.
you should. You
It's
should.
gonna come in.
You should hear me now.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Can
we can hear you.
I come
Elaine, you're breaking
in
up.
there?
Oh,
I love no. A lot of times, the reason why it's a jump is because parents do not have a plan and they do not utilize holidays properly. If we were to look at our Chinese counterparts, they utilize the holidays to catch up on any holes that the child might have, to make sure that they are prepared for the next year. In 6 weeks holiday, you can actually learn a year's worth of work. And so a lot of times parents, they're working all hours God sends, so their children are just sitting in front. Like Emmanuel said the other day, they're going out, they're doing this, but there's no structure to, okay, what are some of the holes that you have going, not even necessarily from primary school to secondary, just going from year 3 to year 4. Parents don't are not able to do that, so you go into year 4 with holes from year 3, and you're wondering why you're not progressing. Sorry, Samuel, go on.
No, that's fine. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Elaine, for jumping in there. I think before this whole secondary school phase starts, you go for transition day, you go for induction day, you go for open day, and all these days are actually important days where parents can ask these questions. You know, what does your school cover in year 7, for example? They tell you what they do. So I think it's really important that parents are, one, intentional, and two, they're just curious about what's going on. They can ask for the scheme of learning. I think the internet is just booming with so much information where they can just look at some of the topics they'll be covering, and it could just be like an audit the parent has to do with the child. Okay, in year 7, bearing in mind, in primary school, you had one teacher who taught all the subjects, right? So you build this rapport, you build this relationship with a person. In secondary school, you would probably have 10 to 11 teachers, different people. So, one, it's about having these conversations about that. And just as Elaine just said, it's about just filling in those gaps, going through the curriculum, going through everything they're going to cover, not, in the whole year in year 7, but it could just be the first term. This is what they're doing. Where do you think you're at? Where, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And then what we can do is to maybe look at some private tuition. So I'm going to prep you for this. I'm not saying throughout the whole 6 weeks of summer, all you're going to do is to work, 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 work. No. All it takes is 15, 20 minutes. Let's look at this. It could be done 3 times in a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for example, just 15 minutes. And that really helps. So that's something that can be looked at in order to identify where the gaps are. And then that would equally help prepare your child for year 7. In addition to that, friendship groups is another thing.
Oh gosh.
You need to make, you need to make the right friends. Of course, day 1, when you have your icebreakers, you've been in different groups, you would be in a tutor group. There are some people you get on with, there are some people you wouldn't know, and it's okay. Get to know people. So these are some of the things parents need to, have conversations about with their kids. And yeah, parents just have to be intentional, and they just have to make time. There's no other way to put it. I mean, you're not just going to send your child to, I don't know, a random school in Tottenham and just say, yeah, you'll be fine. It's one of the best schools and that's okay. No, you've got to put in the work. If you want your child to excel, you've got to put in the work. I know it as much as how we just want to grind, make the money, get your new Jordans, get your Coach bag, so you look what. But it's not just about that. So, yeah, in a nutshell, I think that's all I'll say there.
Yeah. So what we gather from that, it's about actually utilizing the holidays properly, creating a schedule, creating a plan to identify the gaps in learning, going onto the school's website, seeing their syllabus, speaking with the members of staff about, what exam boards the child use. I also wanted to add even identifying the child's learning style, because there's a technique to learning. So identifying whether they're a kinesthetic learner, an audio learner, whether they need visual aids, and giving them revision strategies, learning strategies that they can apply to fill in the gaps in their learning and also develop and enhance whatever they need to learn. I'm going to round off just asking
Just
everybody on this panel for their closing remarks. So,
just one last thing, just very quickly. Can I just
oh
add
yeah,
this last thing? Again, I seem to be a theory person. So again, just something for parents to again look at. If you get a chance, parents and audiences, please look at contextual safeguarding, which is really focusing on the environments that young people growing outside of the home. Just have a bit of a read, have a bit of a Google to it, just get a bit of understanding of it because exactly what we were talking about. We're talking also about obviously the academia of things in terms of happening inside of the school environment where it's controlled. But also I do feel like sometimes young people are definitely influenced by things that are outside of the home as well. So that's a little bit of reading for anyone that's just a bit interested because it's very, very important. It's a theory that's like it's like it impacts a lot of about young people's attitudes about how they feel things are going. So yeah, contextual safeguarding stands for people to look at. Sorry, focus.
thank you, Emmanuel. So I just want to go around and ask the panel members as we round up our conversation for their last closing remarks, words of encouragement, things that they feel that they would really, really want the parents to take from this conversation as we round off. So starting off with Elaine Walker, please share some of your closing remarks for our parents today.
I think that every parent needs a round of applause for what they're doing. They're just doing their very best based on their exposure and based on what they know. And I believe that they come on things like this in order to grow. Reach out to myself and to anybody on here. I run master classes to teach parents how to make their children successful, and it's not just about getting A's at school, because you could not get A's at school. Which one of us is asking us what grades Elon Musk got? Nobody's asking that question. I think that we just, what grade did even Donald Trump get? But that's another conversation. I'm just saying that it's really important to just identify the gift that God has given your child and really work with it. So every parent on here, you're doing your best, but learn to communicate better. That means read books. That means talk to people, join community groups. I always say, and I taught parenting in my son's school for over 9 years, but I always say that going to a parenting class doesn't make you a bad parent, it makes you a more informed parent.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elaine. Sam?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yes, you can. Um, you know what? I would say just be the best you can be. Just show interest in your child's learning, in your child's life. Um, and I think that's pretty much it. Not just their learning, but their life, what their interests are. If they come home and they're talking about, I don't know, football or whatever, just show some interest in that. And let me say this, which ties in perfectly with, I think, something we spoke about. Intentionality is really important. When I met my wife, one of the things I didn't like, I'm not a movie person, I didn't like movies. But then she will call me and she'll start talking about a movie. Now in my head, I thought, geez, what is this? Like, I don't get it. But I had to be intentional. So what I then did was, whenever she's about to watch another movie, I would go on YouTube and watch the trailer. So when we're having a conversation, I fake it until I make it in a good way. And it helped. So parents, fake it, do the research, show as if you're interested in the conversations they're having with you. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, that would help to bring that bond so that you guys can just progress, in the journey and in the life of your child's education or just your life in general. And so, yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Sam. Emmanuel?
Perfect. Hey, for me, my last closing remarks is really saying is advocating to everyone that's listening and watching that raising young people isn't about having all the answers. For me, my experience is about just the showing up. the everyday, the steady presence, and it's about providing a safe and steady presence in their lives as well, in whatever capacity. Our children, I feel like I've grown up in a world where things are very fast and noisy and sometimes very harsh. A lot of different opinions, very strange, swaying opinions, and um, but it's important to know that they have something powerful that's going to stand by them. Because a lot of the times when I speak to a lot of teenagers, and I speak to a lot of teenagers in my line of work, it's about they feel that they're supported. It's about having somebody in their corner. Your voice and your values and your beliefs in them does matter. And eventually, even if they may not understand it now, they may understand it much later on. There's so many things that I envy my parents for that I never understood when I was much younger. Um, and I would also say that when schools and parents, communities generally stand together, young people see that that is of worth investing in. And then that way, it's about the feel of the community raising the young person, because we do live in times where things can be very siloed and isolated. And it's about obviously being part of processes like this, having the willingness to want to improve your knowledge. And so some of the techniques we I've talked about today, restorative practice, talked a little bit about contextual safeguarding. Please do invest in that time. Some of the things that Elaine mentioned earlier as well about the understanding of bringing yourself to the level of communication, active listening. Some spoke about the process of how we can actually, you know, give the tools, the questions, having open-ended questions that actually involves the interest in it. It does matter. So yeah, that's my last closing remarks.
Thank you. And Max?
I'm not always one for sentimentalities, but I think when I've seen and worked with families with children who are very disrupted and are at their lowest, and but perhaps even involved in like criminal networks, something that always gets them through is the parents' love and forgiveness. I swear to everyone that I've seen, being persistent and knowing that the parent understands them no matter what they do. That doesn't mean you have to acknowledge or accept, support it, but understands and forgives them for what they do. Is sometimes the only way out for these children at their darkest point. So really being able to think about, you know, when if people are here really struggling, wanting support, your child needs the support as well, and just being able to make sure that what we have shared today is really moved on to your child's needs as well.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure facilitating this conversation. And I feel so privileged to be amongst everybody who's on this panel today. And I really hope that every parent who was on the call listening and trying to figure out and learn and develop and be intentional, the key word that we've been hearing today, through being a part of this conversation, is blessed and has been able to take something away. So I'm going to pass over to Pastor Phyllis to close the session and to end our conversation.
Oh, wow. This has been a very, very, very good conversation. And please drop an emoji, drop like something in like something lovely. Thank you. And God bless you. Please, I want to see the emojis on Instagram. Let's put it there. Let's put it there and say thank you. For this, to these panelists, wonderful panelists, to Elaine, to Sam, to Emmanuel, to Max, and to our able moderator, Dorcas. I really believe that this conversation has touched the heart and soul of what it means to raise a teen. We could talk about, I think before the conversation, I had a chat with Dorcas, and me having my African hat on, I was thinking, what teenage is all about the learning. It's all about the learning. But it's beyond that. Max says something. If your child is not sound in their mind, there's nothing they can take in. There's nothing they can learn. And that's what most of us fail to understand. And so I really pray that you have learned something tonight. You have taken something away. This video is going to be on YouTube, and we're going to put out the sort of like the tips and the summary from tonight out as well. But take the time, especially with this, and go back and listen, because these wonderful people shared some great gems. And if you need further support, the link to Elaine's group for strategic planning, it's in the chat. You can reach out to us on Instagram via DMs, or you can just send us a message, an email. We're gonna put our email address there, and we will signpost you. Some of these things you can't just come and listen to it online. It's not a one-time ticket on the train to success. It takes time and dedication and being strategic. And so if you feel you need extra support, Miss Elaine has talked to us about there's different areas. There's grammar school, there's public school, there's special schools for different, abilities. There's private schools, there's boarding, there's day. There's a whole plethora of things. Contact her and spend the time with her to be able to figure out what your child is. Emmanuel has spoken and Max has spoken about so many factors that are affecting our young people. And again, I'll take the resource that Emmanuel and has recommended as well, and we're going to put it on our platforms so you can click on it and have a read yourself. But I believe that tonight we've really, really touched on the heart and soul with raising our teens for them to be the brightest. And something just clicked in my mind as I was listening to this panelist, that really the landscape of education of how we knew it is out of the window. AI can answer anything. I'm even thinking, how do they even assess these children? It's a whole different world. And we need to immerse ourselves in it. And with God as our help, and with these wonderful men and women that God has given them the knowledge to assist us, let's tap into them. Let's get more information and let's use their resource. And by all means, sometimes we need to pay for people to give us that resource to
Yeah.
support our children, extra classes, spending our time to do things, having strategic planning. So we need to make sure that we are putting our all, and God will be our help. There's a wonderful comment on YouTube. It says, "I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all the panelists. You have all provided us parents with valuable insight into the importance of intentional parenting in this generation, not in 1956, not in 1995, not in 2005, but in this generation." And that I'm so grateful. Thank you all so much. We'll close the session at 9:30 on the dot. Next week we are back, and next week we're focusing on special education needs, children that have got the extra abilities, children that are just special in our eyes. And we have a wonderful panelist. We have a Senko, we potentially have a speech and language therapist, and we have parents as well that are guiding their children in both secondary and primary school. So join the conversation. Tell a parent who has a neurodivergent child, or in whatever abilities that they may be, and come and join the conversation. And again, this is the ultimate back to school countdown. And I believe that we are counting down very well this year with intentionality. God bless you all and have a wonderful evening. And we'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.